Okay, fantastic. I think we are live. If we're live, please let me know in the comments, by the way. If you're just tuning in, let me know that this is working. So just getting everything set up. So welcome to today's webinar. I'm really excited to have a guest, I was going to say guest lecturer. I would say lecturer is quite the word for it. Exciting guest joining us today. But just a quick introduction for anyone who is new and just tuning in. And by the way, while we're having this quick intro, please drop a message in the chat saying that firstly, you can hear us okay, the tech is all working. And also just let me know what your name is, where you're tuning in from. It's good to get an idea as to who is joining us. So a quick intro to me, if anyone is new. My name is Katie. I am director of Abridge Academy. You may know that I was a former, I can't do words today.
Very formal today, lecturer.
Very formal today, lecturer, formal. I was a former classroom teacher in the UK. I also taught abroad in China and Japan, and of course online. And now I run Abridge Academy to help independent teachers like you get started teaching independently online, finding more students, marketing tips, and of course the Abridge Academy curriculum and all this great stuff. So these webinars are just an excellent way for anyone really who's interested in teaching online or existing independent teachers to learn more about tips to get more students. And that's why I'm so excited to welcome today our guest expert Lauren from Copy That Copywriting. And before anyone gets confused, I got confused by this. Copywriting and copyright, very different things. Maybe I could briefly introduce that earlier because someone's asked me, what's this about legal stuff? And I'm like, it's not quite the same kind of copyright. But we'll mention that in a minute if you're confused, don't worry. So Lauren's going to be telling us all about how to uncover your unique selling point as an online ESL teacher, which, as we know, is kind of the secret to earning higher prices, converting more students, and being more successful. So I'm going to hand straight over to Lauren. Do you want to give a bit more of an introduction to you and what we're talking about today?
Yeah, absolutely. I had a couple of slides here to kind of jog my memory. So, I'm Lauren, and I also taught in China back in 2015. That was me kind of dipping my toe into the world of teaching and seeing if it was for me. But while I was there, I got into blogging, and that then led to a marketing role, which then led to where I am now. So I spent a few years over in China working for a Chinese language school in the marketing department, then specialised in copywriting. And when I came back to the UK almost 2 years ago now, I set up Copy That Copywriting to help language teachers basically learn about marketing and write copy that converts more students. So I'm a big language nerd myself. That's kind of how I ended up in this world. And yeah, I think that's pretty much an introduction to me. Today we're going to talk about understanding what your unique selling point as a language teacher is. Sorry, can I just confirm, is most people here English teachers?
We've actually had a question in the chat from Saida asking, is this just for ESL? So maybe you want to answer that.
Perfect timing. No, so I work with teachers of all languages. So actually the example that I'm using in this presentation isn't ESL, but it applies to any languages. But equally, if you're not actually teaching a language, you could still apply the principles. So it's kind of tailored to teaching, but it's based on marketing principles. Today we're going to be looking at how to understand your ideal students and their motivations for learning the language that you're teaching, identifying your unique qualities as an English teacher, then crafting a unique positioning statement. So that sounds very formal and scary, but it's a lot easier than it sounds. I've got a little template for you. And then finally, what to do with all of the knowledge that you've gathered to create content that kind of cuts through the noise and stands out to the right people.
Fantastic. I'm so excited to learn more about all of this because it's all about how to communicate why you are the best teacher for your students, or for anyone who's looking online, looking for classes with you, why you are the best teacher for them, which is fantastic. Exactly. Should we just quickly cover actually that difference in copywriting and copyright, by the way, because I've had a couple of people message me with the same question.
Yeah, so do you know that is I kind of know that question's coming now, and I see people and they say, what do you do? I say I'm a copywriter, and they're like, oh, okay, so legal stuff. So the first difference is that copywriting is spelt like writing with the W-R-I-G-H, but it's basically writing for advertising. It's a weird word. I don't really know who called it copywriting and why, but it's basically selling with words. So it incorporates creativity with psychology and persuasive writing techniques to show that you are the ideal teacher for your students. And it has nothing to do with legal stuff, so don't ask me questions about that.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you so much for clarifying that, because I think it catches a lot of people out. I mean, obviously the copy that you write is copyright, you could argue.
That's true. That is true.
There is technically a link, but yeah, we're not talking about legal stuff today. We're talking about how to communicate your message and your marketing message to convert more students.
Yes.
We've got a comment here from Brenda saying, this is great to help teachers marketing themselves. Absolutely fantastic.
Yes, that is the goal. So this, it's tied very closely to copywriting, but what we're going to talk about today is going to basically form the foundation of your marketing. So when you have this knowledge, everything gets easier. And I think a lot of teachers kind of enter this world and get a bit overwhelmed because there's so much jargon and there's so much to learn. But I want you to remember that you are language teachers, so you are already good at communicating. This is just thinking in a different way and finding the information that you need.
Absolutely.
So everything starts with understanding your ideal students. So I know this topic today is how to find your unique selling point, but everything goes back to your ideal students, because you can't understand or communicate why you are the perfect choice for them if you don't first know them inside out and upside down. So there are two kind of categories of information that you should look to find out about your ideal students. First of all, it's the demographics information. So this is the kind of basic stuff I think most people probably already have an idea of. It's like the first step that you'll go through, where you think about their age, their location, their employment status, their average income. And in terms of the actual language, this would be their language level. So this is all the very factual, kind of boring information that's necessary to know, but it doesn't really tell you loads more beyond that. It doesn't help you build a picture of who this person actually is. Yeah, exactly, putting yourself in their shoes. So the information that is kind of where all the juicy marketing, copywriting gold lies is in what we call the psychographics. So this is things like their personality. So whether or not they are kind of shy and nervous type of person, or outgoing, bubbly and sociable. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking right now but I'm not targeting one student, I'm targeting lots of students, and all of their personalities will be slightly different. And that's absolutely true. But for the sake of marketing and for the sake of defining who your ideal student is and why you're the perfect teacher for them, you want to just build a picture of one person in your mind. That's going to help you write more clearer messages and be more persuasive in your copy. Now, you're not going to call out these traits that might make other people think, well, that's not me. So, for example, you're not going to say you're a shy and nervous person and put off a bubbly person. But for the sake of this exercise, you want to build a picture of a real person, and then you get it just becomes easier to then speak to them more naturally and convincingly. So I would suggest thinking about a student that you've already had, someone that you've worked with in the past, that kind of person who you would just like more of. If you could just copy and paste them and have more of that kind of student, I want you to think of that person. And then think about what their personality is like, their goals and dreams. So this applies to both the language and their kind of bigger life or professional goals and dreams, because often learning the language is a big part of that. We're not looking at the language in isolation. Their likes and interests. So these are, again, things related to the language, but also outside of that. Do they like sport? Do they enjoy catching up with friends? That kind of thing. Their opinions and values. So these don't tend to show up in your copy unless you are, speaking about specific issues yourself. But this is just one of those kind of things that helps you build out that bigger picture of who this person is. And the kind of topics that are going to resonate with them or not. And then finally, in terms of learning the language, the psychographic information would be their reason for learning. Now, I'm going to talk about this in a bit more detail in a second, but I want to say that their reason for learning is not to become confident or become fluent, which is what I see in a lot of places, on a lot of language school websites, even people who have like proper marketing teams. We're going to look at digging a little bit deeper than that today, because that's how you're going to connect with these people.
Absolutely. I think it's really key to ask these questions. And in fact, even just ask your current students to get more of an idea of this in order to build up this picture. Because as you say, it's a foundations for writing good copy. It's the foundations for your marketing strategy. Too often I see teachers jumping in with like, oh, I want to teach English. And then I'm an English teacher. So they put a whole thing on their website or their social media, learn English, be more confident, be fluent. And as you say, that doesn't actually talk to them. So doing this analysis, I know there's probably a few people sitting there being like, oh, I know I need to understand my student, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But this is so, so important. So thank you so much for going into these details here. I'd also recommend, just while we're doing this, by the way, if anyone, there is going to be a replay of this, but also just take a screenshot of these key questions and then go and do your research on these, because there's so much useful content here. And I know sometimes it's hard to find the time to go back and digest it all again.
Yeah. So I actually have a freebie that I'll tell you about at the end that has some questions in there that you can ask your ideal students. So that I would suggest starting with that, because it's going to make everything else so much easier.
Very exciting. Yeah, stick around to the end for that freebie, because it's got so much like useful step-by-step things to do to help you get progress with this. We've got a few questions in the chat. Do you mind if I pull up some of these questions now, or do you want to
let's do it now. That's fine.
Perfect. So a few people just agreeing nice things, which is always good to see. Like Stephanie here tuning in, agree with Brenda. It's a roadmap to help teachers get to where they want to be, which is fantastic. But someone had a question, Olea, saying, my ideal student is one person. My ideal customer is their parents, right? So I assume you're teaching kids in this case. I always get stuck with making things attractive for parents or the kids. How do you do both?
Yes, this is a challenge, and it is unique. It adds in an extra layer of difficulty, but you need to speak to the people who are making the purchasing decision. So, like you said, the parents. Now, that would mean speaking to the parents and having one of them as your ideal client in mind. So you want to understand why they want their child to learn English, or the language that you're teaching, and what they're hoping for their child to achieve from that. And then you can just speak to them kind of in the same way that we would if we were speaking to the learner. But instead of just saying, you will do this, it can be like, your child will achieve this goal. You also want to factor in, because the parents will have two kind of desires. One will be related to their child achieving a goal, but then the other might be that they want to feel relaxed, that the child is in safe hands. They sometimes might even just want kind of a bit of a break to know that their child can do this thing and they can walk away and they don't have to watch, things like that. So it's just like an extra step. You just need to understand what the person who's buying wants for the person who's learning and for themselves.
Absolutely. So when we look at this information here, you got the screen, the demographics, the psychographics, you're kind of talking about that from the parent's point of view when it comes to your marketing message, and what the parent is, like the reason the parent wants their child to learn English, or the parent's opinions and values, like you said about feeling calm and relaxed that their child is learning and learning English probably from an expert rather than them trying to teach them themselves. Those are things you're thinking about kind of from the parent's perspective. Parent's attitude to the child's learning.
Exactly. And your service might not actually be solving a problem for the child, because the child doesn't really have a problem at this point, but it's solving a problem for the parent. So perhaps they've sent their child to an English class before and it just hasn't worked, or they haven't liked the teacher. So you need to think what problem you're solving, and is that for the parent or the student?
Absolutely fantastic. Really appreciate those insights. Super helpful. Got a few other questions here. Again, I think this is basically the same question Laurie's asking about. Picture the ideal student when maybe targeting the parent. So the picture is of your ideal parent. Yeah. Andrew's commenting saying, helpful seminar. It's super important to justify your worth to potential clients. Why me over tens of thousands of others? Yeah, there's a lot of teachers out there. We know it's getting competitive. The biggest issue for me, it's not quite fitting on the screen. I'm going to read it off what I can see over on the side here. The biggest issue for me is where to find the clients in the first place. As a PhD holder with experience with the university entrance applications, my niche is easily defined, but how do I find these parents from international schools with little prior connection? Is that something we might talk about later on? I'm not sure.
So it's kind of the next slide. Oh, so I'll just do this slide and then the next. will answer your question. So the demographics basically answers the question, who are these people? And then the psychographics answers the question, how they think. And it's how they think that is going to give you all that good stuff for writing copy and marketing. So the demographics, I've just said that it's kind of the boring information, but that does kind of answer your question, Andrew. So demographics should tell you where to market. So you've said here that you're looking for parents from international schools with, you have little prior connection. Okay. So you want to think about where those parents are hanging out. Are they on Facebook groups? Are they on LinkedIn looking for this kind of information? Think about the kind of channels that they'll be using to find information that's relevant to, I guess it's their children, right? Parents of children.
Yeah, I think you mentioned
schools.
Parents of kids at international schools. Yeah.
Yeah. So that information, the demographic information that you're gathering, so it sounds like you've already got quite a good idea of who these people are. I would just look at doing some research into where they are. And what you could do is, say, for example, try and join some Facebook groups that these people are in. And I would start by just asking them if they would be willing to either complete the survey or jump on a market research call with you. Just something for free. You could offer something in return. It could be like a freebie for their child to learn. And then you can ask them some questions that are then going to help you tap into that wider market.
Yeah, fantastic. So it's interesting you point out that demographics tells you where to go. The psychographics tells you what to say, or like the actual messaging, your pitch as such.
Exactly. Yeah. So as well as that, demographics will tell you how to price your offer. If you know that, for example, to use Andrew's example, these are parents of kids at international school. So they have probably got money to spend on their child's education. So perhaps your offer could be slightly more expensive than somebody who's targeting, the example I'm using later, actually, someone who's a university student, for example, they might have a lower budget. And then finally, it can help you figure out which language to market in. I don't know how many people this will be relevant to today, but if you are targeting people in one specific location, or if your ideal students all speak the same language, and you can too, then you might want to market in that language. But like I said, we're looking at English today, so all of this can be applied to other languages, but we'll talk about English. So then, yes, psychographics will tell you what to offer. So when you understand what their goals are and what their challenges are, then you can create an offer that specifically helps them overcome those challenges and reach those goals. It also helps you understand how to communicate and what to say. So by how to communicate, I mean the kind of tone of voice that you're going to be using. So if you're targeting parents, then you might want to use a slightly more formal tone than if you were targeting someone who's, say, the same age as you, or, like I mentioned earlier, a university student. So it helps you kind of figure out the tone of voice and personality you want to portray. And then, of course, what to say. So again, when you know where they want to go and where they are now, you can use that kind of language to highlight those goals and show them how you are going to help them get there. Were there any other questions? I think
I'm just having a look. Most of these people saying things like "thank you" and just commenting with "thank you." Fantastic.
You're welcome.
And Brenda's commenting saying LinkedIn's a great place where they look for professionals as well as Facebook. So yeah, as you say, like the demographic information tells you kind of where to go. Where is that particular demographic of people hanging out?
Yes. Yeah. So the big question now is, how do you find that information? So we've just covered briefly about the surveys and the market research calls. But before you get there, you want to make sure that you have chosen your audience and that they are a specific audience. So I think we spoke a little bit earlier about just saying I'm an English teacher and I teach English isn't a niche. So a niche, I'm sure Katie's told you about all of this before, I'll just say briefly, is a specific group of people who are in a specific situation and want to achieve a specific thing. So the more, I use this word so much, the more specific you can get, the easier it is going to be to write copy that stands out and to attract those people. I was having a conversation about this earlier today, actually, with a teacher who was a little bit nervous to really brand herself as somebody who helps this type of person do this thing. But we were talking about how basically once you do that, you start to see that you attract more of these people. And often it's easy to think, oh, but if I open myself up and say that I teach anyone and everyone, I'll attract more people. But if you actually think about that specific market that you want to work with, think about how many people are in that situation, and you'll realize that there are way too many than you could ever teach on your own. So it's unlikely that the market is too small.
I think that's the big difference as well when it comes to being an independent teacher versus a big mass market company. Big mass market company wants to reach the mass market, so we teach English, whereas and even then they do have some kind of specialism. Usually, they focus on kids or they focus on adults or something. But they talk to a broader audience because they want to reach hundreds of thousands of people. We don't need hundreds of thousands of people. I think we'd be a bit overwhelmed trying to teach that many students. So yeah, niching
Yeah,
down.
exactly. And one thing I say, when you are an independent teacher, you don't have that kind of reputation behind you that means that you can just use this kind of vague generic copy that big schools can. They've got years of experience, or like they've got years of building up that reputation. They've perhaps got awards and things like that, and people know their name. Whereas when you're an independent teacher, you need to give people a reason to believe that you are the right option.
Yeah. I like to use the word specialism as well rather than niche, because I feel like when people see niche, they think, oh, wow, I'm narrowing down, I'm limiting my audience, because we use the word niche quite often quite a negative sense in English, right? Like, oh, that's too niche, or
That's
it's
true,
not a good
actually.
thing. But if you say specialism, like I'm a specialist in helping I don't know, IT professionals develop advanced English presentation skills, doesn't mean you can't teach other stuff, but you're an expert in that one amazing thing. I think it like kind of phrases it more as a
Yeah, I really
positive.
like that. Thank you.
Yeah. If any teachers are out there stressing about like, oh, finding a niche, I'm narrowing it down, I'm restricting my audience. You're not. You're just helping yourself stand out to a particular audience better than anyone else.
Exactly. So once you've done that, you then want to speak to these people. So, like I said, you could go into Facebook groups and try and find people on there who would be willing to help you. Often you'll find that people are quite open to helping, especially if you're going to offer something small in return. I don't think that's necessary, but if you feel like it's going to help, then you can. But if you have students already, then I would suggest running surveys or market research calls with a few of them just to ask some questions to better understand the situation that they're in, where they want to go, what they've tried before, and what might hold them back from signing up to a service like yours. So this is exactly what this extra freebie is all about. So don't worry if you're like, what can I ask them? And then once you've done that, I want you to remember that this is always a work in progress. Your audience is always evolving, your business is always evolving. So you don't just kind of answer these questions and think that's it forever. There's always more to learn. So I would suggest creating a Word document, a Google document, or something like that, and just keeping a running kind of updating this document with information that you find, whether it's from searching online or speaking to people. I think teachers have an advantage in that you're very often speaking to students face to face, and you're helping them overcome challenges in every lesson. So when you're doing that, I want you to put your marketing hat on as well as your teaching hat and start thinking about the things that they're saying and noting that down in this kind of Google Doc, because it's very likely that if some students are feeling that way, then other students who haven't found you yet are also feeling that way, and that information is golden.
It's actually quite interesting you point out that you can do this when you're in class and you're talking to your current students, because actually what we do as teachers, one of the key skills is being able to assess your students' current level of understanding, think about how you're going to help them make progress. That same skill is what we're using here. You're assessing your students' current challenges and their goals, and then rather than using that to help them make progress, I mean, obviously we want to do that too, but you're also behind the scenes, you're processing the information for later to use to help you do your own marketing and reach more students.
Exactly, and then ultimately help more students. So it's very full
Exactly.
circle.
The teachers are already experts in this. Don't feel daunted and scared about doing this market
Mm.
research. It's already what we do every day. We're just framing it in a different way.
Yeah, exactly. And then just keeping a note of it because it's so easy to forget this stuff. Okay, so any questions about that? Was it understanding your students part?
We've got a question in the chat from Lori. How do we set the region we're targeting on Facebook so content gets the right audience? I'm not sure we're going to cover this later, or we might touch on that briefly now.
On Facebook, are we talking about ads?
I'm not sure, potentially, although I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing paid advertising until you've sort of mastered the organic marketing side first anyway. But
yeah, I don't know if it's possible to set the region on your organic Facebook. But this is where I feel that Facebook groups come in really handy. So if you search for things in specific locations, you'll find that there's a wealth of information. I do this quite often when I'm creating content for clients. So, for example, I have a client who's in, her ideal clients are expats in Brussels. I joined a bunch of groups and there's so much information in there that's really useful. So I would have a look at, once you've identified that specialism and figured out who you're working with, then start searching for some Facebook groups like that and engaging in there, because I don't think, as far as I'm aware, there's a way to point your organic content in a specific direction.
yeah, I think you're right there. I think when it comes to organic stuff, it's once you reach the right people, Facebook then starts pushing it to more people like the right people. But if you're reaching the wrong people in the first place, it messes up how the algorithm or something works.
Exactly.
So I love that idea of joining the right groups, because that's the easiest way to get your content in front of the right people. Join a group for someone earlier was talking about international school kids, right? So it could be like expats in a specific location, expats in Beijing or something, or whatever country you're focusing on.
And if your content is speaking to these people's needs, then you'll find that you start to naturally attract them. But equally, if you're posting that content in these Facebook groups, then that's going to draw them to this content as well. So it's all, like I said, it all stems from your understanding of the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is the follow-on question. Always saying, join these groups, get the right audience or just other English speakers. I guess the idea is you join a group that's full of your target audience, rather than joining a group that's for teachers, for example, because that'll be full of other English teachers if you're in an English teaching group.
Yeah. Look for the people that you want to work with.
Absolutely. Okay, I think that's all the questions, so that's great.
Okay. Great. So the next step then is understanding what your students want. So I mentioned earlier about the actual reason for learning the language. Now, one thing I want you to take away from today's session is that your students don't want language lessons. They're investing in language lessons, but that's not their end goal. Your skills as a teacher, your language lessons, are basically a vehicle that's going to help them get to where they want to go. So where they want to go is a place where they feel safe traveling the world, where they can settle into a new country and make new friends there, where they can get a job that earns them more money. Anything. Like, I saw a quote once that said, there are as many reasons to learn a language as there are language learners. So I can't tell you what your students want to achieve, but there will be a deeper motivation that is driving them to put themselves through the challenge of actually learning all the grammar and the words and pushing themselves out of their comfort zone. So it's crucial as a teacher that you understand this, because that's what's going to help you stand out from all of the other people who are just saying that I'm here to help you speak confidently. As you can see, that confidence is important, but it's important for different people in different contexts. I might want to feel confident traveling in a specific country, while Katie might want to feel confident going into a job interview. So the more specific you can get, the more likely you are to pull the right people towards you. So we're going to look at an example now. We've called her Sarah the student. So she wants to learn Chinese. She's graduating soon, and she's going to move to China. It's completely fictional, but for the sake of this example, I'm going to show you what Sarah is like. If you want, you can go along with this whole exercise that we're about to do, thinking about your own students, or you can watch the recording later and do it. But I would suggest having a think about this stuff. Whether or not you've done your market research already, you could kind of get the foundations there. So her demographic information is that she's 23 years old, she's from the UK, she's a final year student, and she's earning around £800 a month, perhaps in part-time, say, restaurant work or something, and she is a total beginner in Chinese. Her psychographic information, her personality is outgoing and ambitious. Her goals and dreams are that she wants to have a good career. She's interested in traveling the world and exploring new cultures. Perhaps she values inclusivity and equality, and she's moving to China. Therefore, she's learning the language for fun. That's an intrinsic motivation. She doesn't have to learn it to go there, but she wants to. So that is her kind of surface level reason for learning the language. But why is she really learning? So that's what we're going to look at now. And this is a really, really useful exercise that I suggest everyone does at some point. Because, like I said earlier, it's very easy to stop at that kind of surface level thing and say, you want to learn Chinese to say move to China. But there is, like I said, always a deeper meaning, deeper reason, sorry. So we're going to figure that out now. So Sarah wants to learn Chinese. We're going to follow that on with a so she can. So she wants to navigate daily life and understand the culture. As you can see, we've already gone one step further into understanding why Sarah is learning the language, but we still don't want to stop there. That's still not kind of like the core driving factor. So she can engage with locals and make friends. We're getting there. We're starting to build a bigger picture of who she is and why she's putting herself through learning characters. So she can feel integrated and connected with the community. So you can see that's a much deeper and more meaningful goal, but we can still go deeper. So she can feel more comfortable and at home in China. And then finally, so she can make the most out of her experience and gain skills that will help her in her career after she leaves. So this goal here, right at the end, is that core desire. And like I said, this is all fictional, so it will differ depending on your students. You may find that you get to the core desire a little bit sooner than we have here, but you'll know once you've got there because it's got so much more detail. We're not just saying that she wants to kind of explore and chat to people. You've got to the bottom of what's motivating her to do this. So not only that, but we've got here a short-term goal and a long-term goal. So she wants to make the most out of her experience. That's her immediate goal. But then in doing so, she wants to gain skills. So that could be the language skills, cultural knowledge that will help her in her career, because remember, she has big career goals after she leaves the country, after she's finished her time there. So when you get to this point and you've identified that short-term goal and that long-term goal, it's going to help you not only write copy that's going to speak to them where they are right now, but it's going to show that you really understand them because you know exactly what they're thinking and why they're embarking on this journey. Does that make sense? And does anyone have any questions?
I think that's really, really useful to see. So basically you're asking why this? And you say, if she wants to learn this, why? Well, so she can do this. Why does she want to do that? Well, so she can do this. And it's about asking your students more in depth. Ideally, actually asking the student directly. But, doing your market research, getting that information out of them. Why exactly are they learning the language? Not just, I want to learn English or I want to learn Chinese in that example. But why? What is the ultimate end goal of that?
Exactly. And you'll find if you ask your students this information that a lot of them will say, I want to be confident. Like, I've had this on market research calls so many times. So you as the teacher need to probe a bit. You need to ask them, for example, what will that help you achieve? Why would you like to be confident in speaking the language? And then you'll find that you start to tap into that inner motivation. I would approach any market research calls and things like that as a conversation. You don't want it to be too scripted because you want to give them the chance to speak freely. And I would always record them so you can give them your full attention and then ask natural follow-on questions. But once you get over that initial reluctance to really think about it, they will probably give you some really good answers. And then you'll start to be able to draw connections between different people. So when I do projects for clients, I get on like between 5 and 7 market research calls. And without fail, I find that there is a common theme between different people. So everyone has slightly different goals, but there is something that's driving them to do this thing that it kind of aligns with the other people.
I think it's also really helpful from a teaching perspective as well. I know sometimes we're thinking, it's wasting time, I should be teaching or whatever. But, it's, as you say, absolutely fundamental, important information to have for your marketing strategy. But also this is really helpful when you're planning what you're going to teach your students, because if you know they have a really clear career goal and they want to transition to a new industry or something, you can then teach lessons that are related to that career goal rather than very generic English lessons. So definitely really useful sort of approach to take. I've got a few comments. I'm not sure they're necessarily questions as such, but there's a question here about, or comment more about Chinese students, WeChat's a great place to find students, absolutely. And the question then is how to use WeChat effectively. I have a WeChat course, by the way. If anyone wants to check out my WeChat course, it's on the Abridge Academy website. Please check that out. WeChat is a messaging app, if anyone's unfamiliar with it, very popular in China. But what Lauren was saying about understanding your demographic and where they hang out online, what kind of websites and apps do they use? Well, if you're teaching Chinese students, they're most likely using WeChat. So this would be an example. And then you go away and do your research on WeChat to learn more about it. But yeah, you'll find a lot more information about that on the Abridge Academy website if you want to learn about WeChat specifically. George is saying, is this teacher king? And no, most certainly not. So my courses are, I have courses on social media marketing China, on WeChat and Xiaohongshu marketing. Sorry, completely away from today's webinar topic. So please check out the
I am
Academy
not,
website.
by no means a WeChat expert. So
yeah, so Lauren is an expert on writing copy and the content you're going to put on WeChat. So make sure you pay attention to everything in today's session to learn about what to write on WeChat or other Chinese social media apps. But yeah, do check out Abridge Academy website. I'll just it should be in the description. But if you just search for Abridge Academy, the courses, there's loads of courses on WeChat marketing. There's a free one on getting started on Xiaohongshu, for example. So yeah, do check those out. Cool. Great. Sorry, I'll go back to today's topic. Thank you, Lauren.
Yes, so I would strongly suggest going through doing this exercise and getting to that core motivation. I probably wouldn't do this exercise with your ideal students on a market research call. Like I said, treat that like a conversation, ask them some questions and try and get to the bottom of it by speaking to different people. And then you can challenge yourself to do this exercise and go deeper to figure out why they're learning English. Oh, and just to go back to the point about parents, you would do this with the parents rather than the child.
Yeah, I think interrogating a 5-year-old on why they're learning English might be a bit scary.
Yes. They'll probably end up saying they don't want to learn it after all.
Absolutely. But as you said before, your target customer, your target client is the parent and not the kid. So it's the parent you want to ask, why do you want your child to learn English or French or whatever language you're teaching? And then why do you want them to do that? Maybe they want to do well in school. Well, why do you want them to do well in school, and so on?
Yes, exactly. So it can feel like a bit of an interrogation, but it's
yeah, as you say, I like the idea. See it as a conversation, not as a interrogation as such.
Exactly. So this whole session was about identifying your unique selling point as a teacher, and so far we've only spoken about your students. So now we have gathered all of that information. We're going to look at how to actually apply that to you as the teacher. So what makes you the perfect teacher for your students? This consists of various things, and this will all depend on exactly who you are and who your ideal students are. But to give you an idea, it starts with your understanding of your students' needs and goals, which is why we've just started with that. So the better you can show that you understand them, the more likely it is that your content is going to speak to them and help them kind of, start to know, like, and then trust you, which then will lead them to buy from you. It also consists of your unique personality. So I think something that a lot of people, myself included, are scared to do when they first start marketing themselves is really kind of showing who you are. It can be quite scary to go out there and just be the face of, sorry, my laptop just went funny, to be the face of a business on social media. But the more kind of yourself you can be, the more likely it is that you're going to attract the right people. It's kind of similar to choosing that specialism and speaking directly to them, because you'll often find that the people that you most want to work with are the people that are naturally drawn to you. So I would think about the personality traits that make you appealing to your ideal students. If it's that you are targeting like academics and you're an academic person and you've got the kind of qualities that they're looking for, then note those things down. But equally, if you are if you're you like to laugh and joke and your students aren't that serious, they like to joke around with their teacher, then maybe that's something that you could note down. Then we have your approach to teaching. So you'll probably find that people have tried learning English before and perhaps it hasn't really been what they're looking for. So it could have been something that they did at school and they didn't like the methods, or it could be that they've tried another teacher and they didn't really like their approach. So think about your unique approach. What is it that you do that makes you perfect for them? It could be the style that you use. For example, if they don't like traditional methods, like the kind of rote repetition stuff, you could focus on the fact that you don't do that, you do something different. Or it could be some unique thing that you've done. So, for example, if you've got a background in business, then you can. What was that making it complicated? If you've got a background in business and you're teaching business English, then that can help position you as someone unique as well. And then finally, your course, classes, or offer. So this is what aligns directly with your students' needs and goals. All you need to do is make a fast connection with the parents and students. Kind of goes against everything we're talking about.
I think the key thing here is that you want to communicate why you are the best teacher, not you're just a teacher who can help them. Because if you talk about your unique selling point and you can talk directly to that student, they are more willing to pay good prices for your classes. They're not just see you as, oh, this is a random English teacher who just randomly connected me on whatever app you're using. So yeah, it does sound like you're making it complicated, but it's there to set the foundations. And actually, although it sounds like a lot, all we're doing is understanding, why does your student want to learn English? What are their longer term goals? And how do you as a teacher have the sort of skills, the experiences, the personality, the approach to teaching that matches up with that in order to then communicate that more directly? So yeah,
exactly.
It sounds complicated. It's not complicated. It's
so
just
what you're mentioning there, you're talking as if we're already on a call with these people. That's not the case. So we're talking about how to get them into your world and choose you to choose to get onto a trial lesson with you or sign up to your paid courses. Because when there's a sea of other people saying that they can do the same thing, you need to find what makes you unique. So that will be a combination of things. So your personality, your approach, the actual offer itself, and of course your understanding of the students.
I found it interesting that you've not mentioned qualifications and things here. Because I quite often see teachers, they'll put up on their whatever social media profile or whatever they're advertising. I'm a teacher, I've got a TEFL certificate, so I've got a CELTA, and I'm a qualified teacher, and they put that out as their message. What are your thoughts on that?
So my thoughts on that are that, of course, your qualifications are important. So I'm never going to say they're not, but they are not going to attract students unless they are, say, for example, academics who are looking for somebody who has a very specific qualification. Your average parent or English student doesn't necessarily know what a CELTA is or a TEFL is. They're looking for what you can do for them. So the way I like to think of it is that you want to basically attract people into your world with something that's going to speak to them. So that would be showing that you understand what they're looking for and that you can help them get there. And then once they've got into your world, you want to build a connection with them. So that would be by showing your personality a little bit. And then at the point where they're weighing up their options and thinking, do I want to learn with you? Then you can kind of bring in the qualifications. So in terms of your bio, that would look like a statement that says, I help you do this. Then introduce yourself a little bit in terms of what you're going to help them do. And then say, with a background in teaching, with a TEFL certificate and something like that, because that then shows that you're credible. It builds trust and gives them that final kind of seal of approval to think, okay, yeah, this person can really help me do this thing.
Absolutely. I love that it's not your first message. You don't go like this straight away with, I'm a qualified teacher with these specific qualifications. Like, as you say, they probably don't even know what those qualifications mean. But that's, as you say, it's just there as that final seal of approval, just pointing out, okay, this is my teaching approach. The reason I like this teaching approach is because when I did my whatever training that you did, research proves that this one's the best method for my particular teaching strategy or whatever. It's interesting. We've got,
another quick way to think about that is, how if you say you're at a party and you meet someone and they just come up to you and they're like, I don't know, I have a PhD. And you're like, I don't care. Who are you? You have no investment in understanding why they have it or what they do. It just kind of it doesn't resonate with you. Whereas if they come up to you and they say, I don't know, I really like your dress. That's a bad example, but it's something that relates more directly to the person that you're speaking to. Then they're more likely to care once they get into conversation with you and you reveal a little bit more about yourself.
Absolutely. And using that same party analogy, right? They come up to you, they've got a PhD, and you think, okay, they're a bit of a, too much ego going on there. But if they go up there and they start a conversation with you about your common interest in quantum physics or something, and then they show they've got expert level knowledge in that, and they back that up by saying, oh yeah, my PhD's in that, then you're like, oh, okay, the PhD backs up that they've got the expertise in what I'm interested in and what I need.
Exactly. That was a better example than
mine. But I love the example. Great one. And I also love we've convinced George in the comments here. Qualifications mean nothing. A genuine smile means more. A fantastic quote.
Yes, and you want to put that genuine smile into your words, into your copy. So that's another nice way to look at it.
Absolutely. And also another one comment from George. If they're wearing an Elsa t-shirt, this is, I think, the idea that's, are we making this too complicated? All we need to do is think about, be there, be present for your students. And then when you see what they're interested in, it all clicks and it all works. That's exactly what we're talking about here, George. So if they're wearing an Elsa t-shirt, show them toys of Elsa you have. I assume this is for teaching kids. That goes back to what you're saying about finding what they're interested in, finding what their values are, finding, what they like. And then that's part of your marketing message.
Exactly. And I think George's point there is that you're already on the call. So by saying, for example, you've seen they've got that Elsa t-shirt on, we're talking about doing this before they've even got on a call with you. So you've identified that these people like this specific thing, and then you are talking about this in your copy. So that's going to then draw them closer to you and get them to the point where they're willing to get on a call with you.
Yeah, and it shows that you're able to do that sooner then, because if we're waiting till they got on the call and then it just so happens you both have a common interest in Elsa, that's fantastic. But think of all the students you missed because they didn't know that you also liked Elsa, because you didn't put that in your marketing messages, because you weren't aware that your target student are big fans of Elsa. So I'm not sure necessarily with copyright issues and all kinds of things, so maybe having frozen classes all over is necessarily the best approach. But in this example, by understanding your students' interests, you can use that to build a bit of rapport on your social media upfront in the first place.
Exactly. So we're going to go back to Sarah now, and we're going to look at just some of this basic demographic and psychographic information that we pulled up earlier, and then link that up to various aspects of what you do that makes you the perfect person for them. So this is just helping you kind of map it out in your mind as to what exactly makes you the best person for them. So she's 23. Perhaps all of your groups are filled with people of a similar age, so she will resonate with them. She's in the UK. Maybe that's not so relevant because your classes are online, so they can access them from anywhere. She's a final year student, which probably means that she is really busy. She's under a lot of pressure. She's got other things to think about. So learning the language isn't her number one priority. So you can build courses that then work around that. So perhaps you have things that mean they can learn on the go, or flexible rescheduling options, things like that. She earns around £800 a month. Your offer is an affordable offer for her. She's a beginner. Your course is designed for beginners. She's outgoing and ambitious. Perhaps it's all built in a very lively way. Perhaps it's group courses. You have a community chat, which means that she can meet other people who are also going to China before she goes. She wants to learn Chinese with a long-term goal of helping her career. You can acknowledge this in your content. So I'm going to cover that in a little bit more detail soon, but if it's a long-term goal that your course doesn't immediately solve, then it's just something that you can use to show that you understand them, rather than saying that your course will help them do that. She is interested in travel and culture. Well, your course is built around practical travel content that's going to help her understand the Chinese culture. And then finally, she's moving to China. Your course, your content, your whole message is centered around this goal. So I hope that helps you kind of see how you draw those parallels. So you're not just saying, I teach English, you're breaking down the ideal student in your mind or on a piece of paper, and then lining up exactly what it is, who they are with what you offer, to show how you are in the best position to help them. So to go back to you, what makes you the perfect teacher for your students? Some examples. Are your students super busy? Maybe you have a flexible approach or flexible schedule. And do they hate traditional learning methods? You do it differently. Perhaps you use apps, games, things like that. Are they studying to go to a business school? Maybe you have a business background and you can teach them more than just English. The same applies to other things. Perhaps if they are Chinese students and you speak Chinese, well, there's a great USP that you can speak to them in Chinese. And that, it applies to everyone has different kind of backgrounds. So I would think about that rather than just thinking about yourself as a teacher. I've used that exact same thing actually. So my experience learning languages and working in marketing for a language school then kind of combines to help position me as a person who can help language teachers market themselves. So you want to think about what your students want from their lessons, what has and hasn't worked for them in the past, why they're learning, and whether or not you've got these shared experiences. So all of that will help you then think about yourself in terms of their needs and their goals. Any questions?
I think we've covered most of the questions, which is fantastic. A few questions are on other topics, but people are asking about like classing and various things. But I have other videos on those, or someone message afterwards if you've got questions on unrelated topics. But yeah, I'm super excited for this next bit about unique selling propositions. So please, everyone, pay attention. Lots of really exciting information coming up.
Yes, so once you've got all of that information, that's kind of the pre-work that you need to do. Then you can use it to define your unique selling point. Oh, we have a question? Is it? Okay.
Yes. Are you teaching them or providing them entertainment? When you work out this answer, you'll be a big success. I guess it comes to your marketing message, right?
Yeah, exactly. When you figure out what it is that you're offering and what they want, then yes, you will be a success.
Yeah. We usually want to be teaching our students, not just entertaining them, because there are many cheaper forms of entertainment out there that then we'd be competing with.
Yeah. So your unique selling point, or USP, as you'll probably see it referred to, it's a concise summary of what makes your product or service better than the competitors. So for you as a teacher, that means what makes you a more suitable choice for them. So to use me as an example, a language teacher could choose any copywriter and some may choose somebody else, but a lot of clients come to me because of my background learning languages and in marketing for languages. So that is my unique selling point, that I have those insights that other copywriters don't necessarily have. And equally, other copywriters I know specialize in, say, sustainability, and that's knowledge that I don't have. So that's what you want to think about. What do you have that other people don't? So then you can use this template, which is I help X do Y by Z. So to use our example, I help busy final year students make the most of living in China by teaching practical language skills that impress the locals and employers. So there we've captured who Sarah is. So she's a busy final year student. Her goal, making the most of living in China. Then the way that we do it, by teaching practical language skills. And then we've captured here her long-term goal and her short-term goal. So impressing the locals, kind of making her life easier there, and then employers later on. So I would suggest using this template because it's it's a clear one to follow. And then you can use this statement both in your marketing, if you feel like you've managed to put it nice and concisely. But you can also just use it to help you understand why you're the perfect choice and then to move it into your content. So we're going to look now at how exactly to do that. So I want you to think about this USP statement as a kind of umbrella. And then underneath, you're going to define a few key messages. So these are things that basically support that overarching message. So you've said that you are the perfect teacher to help people who want to go and live in China. What are your key messages that are going to support that statement? These will then help you Make sure that your message is consistent across all of the platforms, and just it will give your students a reason to believe that what you're saying is true. So again, we're going to look at this example. So your key message one could be that you're offering practical courses. So these are things that focus on language that will help them navigate situations. Living in China is not generic, because you're not saying I teach Chinese to anyone who wants to learn it. You're saying I teach Chinese through practical courses that are going to help you in travel situations or living there. Then the second key message could be that you have a very social environment. So we're speaking to the fact that this ideal student is very outgoing and ambitious. They like to engage with people. So you're giving them a chance to meet people before they leave, so that they can make the most of the social side of living abroad and then feel safe when they're there. And then the third key message could be speaking to their desire to learn more about the culture. Perhaps you have cultural activities, cultural events, you teach about the culture, which will help them then better understand all of that, and then help them achieve their long-term goal as well, which is understanding the culture better to help them in their career. So I hope that makes sense. So you want to create the unique selling point statement and use that as your umbrella, and then create these key messages that then support this overarching message.
I think this also really highlights how you can have different messages depending on who your target student is, right? So here you're talking about students who are outgoing, and therefore having the social environment is really important. The cultural activity is really important because they want to go, in this case, move to another country and understand the culture and make friends there. Whereas you could be teaching exactly the same language, but to business professionals who want to stay within the country they're already in, stay within the same company they're already in, but get more clients overseas, and you'd have very different sort of messaging here. So this is really helpful as an example. Thank you so much for that example.
Yeah, you're welcome. But yeah, it just helps kind of clarify what it is you do, and then how you can prove that, basically. So it's a good exercise to get you thinking.
Yeah. I've got a comment here from Amanda talking about how her students became friends with her kids, which was really cool because they could video call each other and play online, so they could both learn English together. So this would be a great example, really, of one of these things that you mentioned about the social environment here.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, kids love to talk, right? The kids love to make friends. And maybe the parent we mentioned before about parents who might be concerned about their children learning online, or it's not necessarily safety, but sort of friendliness of the learning environment. So this would be a great thing to mention in marketing, to get across that you recognize that fear that the parents have and that they value the social environment more.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so this exercise is basically about figuring out what it is they value, and then making sure that you focus on that in your copy and in your content to prove to them that you are there to offer that, which again helps position you as the right choice for them.
Really useful. Thank you so much for this. Really helpful.
You're welcome. So there's just a little bit more to go. So first of all, where should you use this information? So I would first of all do this exercise to help you get it out on paper and understand what it is you're offering to who and why, and how you're going to help them achieve that. And then you can use this structure to basically guide all of your messaging. So having something like this on your computer will help make sure that you're not going off on a tangent. And so your main message is that you help people learn for travel purposes, but now suddenly you're talking about business courses, or you usually talk about offering a practical approach, but now you're talking about kind of going back to theory. So if you see, it just helps keep everything consistent. Then you can use this in your course descriptions. So your USP statement, for example, could be there. When you're describing your course, you could mention the focus on cultural activities or the focus on a sociable environment in your content where it's relevant. So we're going to look at content in a little bit more detail in a second. But if you are posting content about your courses, then these pillars just basically help make sure that you are talking about the same kind of things every time. And then finally, in conversations about your courses. So when you're actually selling your courses to your ideal students, those key messages just remind you what it is they're looking for. So instead of going off on a tangent and kind of, I don't know, if you're nervous on a sales call, you can keep that in front of you and just remember, okay, based on my research, I know that my ideal students are looking for practical courses, a sociable environment, and cultural knowledge. And then you can keep drawing on the things that you do that prove that you offer those. Okay, using this knowledge in your content. So I think I see this everywhere. A lot of teachers struggle with kind of attracting people through their content. They will post quite generic content that speaks to everybody, or that educates on the language, and then they'll see that it works for some people, because I think there are a few big names, accounts that have just exploded. They get a lot of engagement and they're posting content that's similar to yours. So then you start to think, well, hang on a minute. Like, why is this not working for me, but it's working for other people? I don't have an answer to that. I think that some people came along sooner. Some people's style just resonates a bit better with other people. I don't know. Sometimes it could just be an algorithm thing. But posting this kind of content that just educates on the language isn't the most effective way to attract people, or even if you do get that engagement, it's not then the most effective way to sell. So in order to make sure that your content is actually selling, you want to provide something unique. And that means understanding or using your understanding of your ideal students in your content to speak to them more directly. So yes, you want to speak to the specific target audience. You want to provide practical tips that the dictionary can't. So think, if you're just saying, this is an idiom in English, or this is how you say this word in real life, they can find that anywhere. They could Google it, they could chat to a friend and find that out. You're not showing your expertise, you're just kind of regurgitating information. So think about the things that you can offer that Google can't, for example. And then reinforce what you offer, your USP. So we're going to look now at how to make content a bit more specific to show that you're not just a generic English teacher, you're this specific type of English teacher. So we're going to still use our example of Sarah, or potential Sarah's teacher. How to say hello in Chinese. I see this kind of content everywhere, especially not so much in the English teaching world, but definitely in the Chinese teaching world. A lot of teachers will just say, like, this is how you say this, or this is how you say this. And they'll just repeat words, and it doesn't really add any value. It doesn't tell me anything I can't look up on an app. So instead of saying how to say hello in Chinese, you could say how to greet your new boss in China. See, that's instantly more specific. That's not going to speak to somebody who, well, actually, it might not speak to Sarah, who wants to go there to travel or just kind of get around. But it will speak to somebody who has that specific goal or is about to go and work in China or use Chinese. So the 4 tones you need to know. Okay, again, it's quite generic. It's not really speaking to any specific need. Now, another approach that we've taken here is to go and say something unexpected. So instead of saying, here are the 4 tones you need, which is what all the Chinese teachers are saying, you're going against the grain and you're showing your opinion. Stop focusing on tones. Here's why. So that might grab somebody's attention if they've tried learning it before and it's not really stuck. Then you could go on to explain your unique approach. So do you see there how, like, the first one speaks directly to their needs. The second one starts to show your unique style, your teaching method, your personality. And it positions you as somebody unique.
It also really shows as well that you're understanding the challenges and the goals your student has. Lots of people with Chinese learning. I don't know how many people in the chat tried learning Chinese before. I've been learning Chinese for over 10 years now. Tones is probably the most difficult thing for new Chinese learners. And I remember my teacher drilling us when I went to China, the whole first month we spent learning pinyin and like tones. That was it. For like the whole first month. And it was so difficult, some people never got it. So by talking directly to that particular student and saying, I understand you find this really difficult, don't worry, it's not actually that important. This is my approach. It's showing that you understand them. I really, really love this. And I know I'm repeating kind of what you already said here, but I want to emphasize just how important this messaging is, because it's really, really helpful. So hopefully everyone's taking notes of these examples, because they're fantastic.
So yeah, you can apply that to what you do as well. So if I can't think of an example in English off the top of my head, but if there's a specific approach that most people take and your students have told you in your market research that that just doesn't work for me, then you can use an approach like this to stand out and speak, like Katie just said, speak to that goal or struggle. And then another one, 10 phrases you need in China. Quite generic. 10 phrases to survive your first week in China. So again, we've got a lot more specific there by calling out that situation, speaking to that. So I hope those give you a good idea of how to use that knowledge that you gain from your ideal students to then turn that into more specific content. If you ever find yourself jotting down some ideas of things like this, say how to say hello, 10 ways to say hello, challenge yourself to think, how can I make this more specific to my students, and how will this help them solve one tiny aspect of the problem? So in this example of greeting your new boss, you perhaps solve the bigger problem of helping them learn business Chinese, let's say, or business English, but you're helping them with your content solve that small step of saying hello to their boss. So everything you do, make it more specific. That's like basically the best marketing advice there is. Be more specific. Okay, so I mentioned earlier that there is an extra freebie. So there's a marketing guide that Katie's got perfect right on cue. She just shared the link to, but I'm going to share one after the session with some market research questions. So this basically has in it 15 different questions you can ask your ideal students. I'm not saying you have to ask all of them, but you can go through and see which are relevant. Then explanations on why you should ask these questions, and a swipeable template that you can send out in an email to ask them to basically help you with this. You can also use these questions if you want to run market research calls. So I've said survey here, but they apply in both cases. And does anyone have any questions?
Thank you so much for this. Can I just check, is this a different link to this link that was your teacher's marketing?
Yes, so the one that you've pasted here is it's kind of like an introduction to marketing. You should still find it useful, so you can download that one too. But then this one will help you I finished this presentation and then realized actually this one is much more useful for you to get started with probably the hardest bit of it all, which is the market research.
Fantastic. Do you have the link to hand, by the way? Because I could just pop it in the chat just now.
Yes.
And while we're grabbing that, if anyone's got any questions, please pop them in the chat, because so much information today, which was fantastic. Yeah. And I know we answered quite a few as we went through, but if anyone's got any more questions relating to this, please drop it in the chat. We've got a few thank yous. Amanda saying, thank you, I enjoyed this. Fantastic.
You're welcome. I tend to pack my sessions with a lot of information, so I hope it wasn't too overwhelming.
No, it's fantastic. It was also really helpful to see that whole process of going through from the market research part and how that links into your messaging, because I think sometimes we separate those out too much. So showing that whole process of how you analyze your target audience, think about what exactly their goals are, and then use that in your messaging. Super, super helpful.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, like somebody said earlier, it can feel like you're overcomplicating things, but you need to do that really before you can simplify it, because then when you simplify it, it's a lot clearer what you need to be saying. Because if you don't do that kind of like making it complicated work, then you're basically going to be guessing all the information that you want to find, and that's when your marketing starts to become a bit generic and not very targeted.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's very tempting to just do that, to take a guess, but yeah, as you say, doing the market research first, really helpful for informing your strategy with proper data to back it up.
Exactly. So yeah, it's worth spending some time on, and it can feel quite boring and tedious, and I think you said earlier about feeling like you should be teaching and not wasting time doing something. You will probably feel like that, but trust me when I say that it will help everything. It will help you create courses, classes that are going to help your students, then it will help you create that messaging, which will all help you attract more students, help more students, and then kind of grow your business.
Exactly. It's one of those things you have to do, even though it's can be quite scary and feels like you're wasting time. You're not wasting time. Definitely
Yeah,
agree
because
with
you'll
that.
waste more time staring at a blank screen thinking, what am I going to write?
Definitely guilty of that. Okay. Laura's just commenting saying, Lauren's demystified marketing content for teachers. This is the one area that gives me the biggest trouble. So I'm glad you found this helpful.
Good, that's my goal.
Fantastic. Oh, yeah, I've just seen in our chat the link to the market research guide. Let me pop that in the chat for everyone. Sorry, my computer's popping up with all kinds of not helpful things. No, I don't want to make a new folder. I want to make a new comment. Where's it gone? Yes, delete that new folder it created. I don't know what my computer's doing at the moment. Here we go. No, that's the handbook again. Copied the wrong thing. This is going well, guys. Yes, copy that link. Copy link. We're getting there. We're getting there. Okay, fantastic. I've just popped that in the chat. If you're watching on Facebook, by the way, the chat may or may not actually be showing up properly. Apparently, Wave Video is having issues posting messages on Facebook. So if you can't see it on the Facebook, I mean, this one looks like it worked, but I think only on the Facebook page, but not in the Facebook group for some reason. So if you can't see it, then the link's here, and I'll put it as a comment on the video itself. I'll go back and do that on the Facebook groups. But yeah, if you're on YouTube or on the Facebook page, you should be able to see this, hopefully, in the chat. So copy that, copywriting.co.uk/market research guidebook. Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you so much for that, Lauren. And that's going to be so helpful for people. So fantastic.
You're welcome. It's me keeping you accountable.
Yes.
You see, Young Learners International, I'm guessing.
Oh, yes. Here we go. That's Brenda.
That's what I want to hear.
Very good. Showing up on YouTube. Good to know. Okay, awesome. Great. Any last questions from anyone? I know we've run over time, so thank you so much, Lauren, for sticking around with all this. I think it's mostly people saying thank you. So should we wrap things up?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Lauren, for this really, really helpful insights into like how to do market research and how to use that to position yourself as an expert who talks directly to your students in your messaging and in your marketing. Really helpful insights for everyone. So yeah, thank you so much. Don't forget to get your freebie. Link is in the description, in the comments, or wherever you can find it. And I will comment that on. If you want the link, by the way, and you're on Facebook and you can't find the link, please just put a message in the chat now, and I'll come back to you and send you the link directly. But yeah, don't forget to get your freebie. So yeah,
and let me know how you get on with it.
Yes, excellent. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you everyone in chat as well for all your participation. Thank you so much, Lauren, for all of your insights, and see everyone again hopefully in another video. Lauren, feel free to stick around a bit. I'm just going to end the live stream now.
Okay,
so, thanks everyone.